Hey YouTube, it's Dimitri. Today we're going to talk about projects and hiring and the challenges that go into this because I had an interesting discussion on Discord. So if you were not part of the Discord channel, go to the description below, click the little link and join our Quant community here. It has been surprisingly good now. After we had the dumpster fire week when we started, maybe 2 weeks, things have cheered up. I have a paid subscription where I just spend a little bit more time and emphasis answering questions. It's really just to support this channel. I gave out 2 tickets to the Cornell conference, which cost, I don't know, like the retail value was $320 per ticket. So I gave out 2 of those tickets. I purchased them and gave them out to people, which is awesome. I appreciate you guys supporting me on the channel as well. But there's been a really good, interesting conversation here on projects, doing projects, and then it turned into a hiring process here. So I'm not going to share all the messages here. I will keep these private. Kind of part of what Discord is, I guess, is being anonymous. But somebody wanted to know, like, what sort of projects do you do? And then I threw out my typical examples because I've been down this rabbit hole lately on inverse reinforcement learning for, portfolio management. So let me just talk about good projects, bad projects, and then let me get into the actual interesting discussion because the person that's actually commenting back and we're kind of debating, I believe they actually do work in the industry at one of these big, have worked at, do work at, I don't know, it's Discord. But I believe they have worked at one of these, big buy-side investment funds, quant funds, in a few different places and have done some hiring, I think, is what they've kind of mentioned. And I've kind of seen some commentary and some of the quality of the comments. So I judge you. Yes, I judge everybody. The quality of comments have been better. So let's start off with, so you're a student, you have a resume, you're already going to have your undergrad done. You're probably working on your graduate degree at this point. You can't change that. I'm sorry, that is just what it is. So when people ask the question, what can I do to improve my resume? The topic of projects typically comes up. I was strongly against projects in the beginning. A lot of this comes to the fact, I guess, depending on where you are in the progression here. I think you should just get a really solid education in undergrad. I don't think the university makes a lot of difference, to be honest with you guys, but you need to get a solid enough education to land into a much better master's program. I say this because this is the route I took. It was much cheaper to go to Washington State University. I was in-state tuition, much cheaper. And then I was able to go to University of Michigan, which for those people that aren't that familiar, University of Michigan's considered like what they call public Ivy. Basically, it's just a really, really, really good public school. It's typically number 1, number 2, right up there with like UVA, for example. So really good schools. But I think typically it's best to save some money if you can on an undergrad. If your parents have a lot of money and you can just go wherever the hell you want and you're super smart and have great scholarships, like go to an awesome undergrad as well. Like really nail this home. And I do look at undergrads when I hire, I look at the degree, I look at the school. I often don't care though where the school is. I tend to put a lot of weight though on the degree. Is it a math degree? Is it an engineering degree? Or is it something fluffy like public relations or I don't know, public policy or something else? Like trying to judge that out in the undergrad degree. Then at that point, right, I would tell you like, hey, really focus on not the projects. Like that's a waste of time. Really focus on your grades, getting into that good master's, that good PhD program. That's where your time and energy should be focused, not on projects as an undergrad, right? The next step is grad school. But if you're in grad school, projects I think are an important part here somewhat. Now, the reason I say this, and I'm going to say this a little bit, is some programs do an amazing job with the curriculum. So if you look at my rankings, typically the programs on my rankings, my fancy quant rankings, you can Google on YouTube, whatever, I'll put a link below as well in the description here. I rank programs, I look at the curriculum, I'm trying to find really good programs teaching really relevant material to the industry at an academic, rigorous standards. This does not happen at most programs. So I've been cautious about ranking programs because it's hard to really judge that because they're not going to let you in on a lot of secrets here and a lot of the information. But if you end up with a really good master's program, often there's going to be a project involved and that project's going to be interesting and rigorous and you can list out details on the project. So you can have your education section on top of the resume. It should be quite large and have the university should have relevant topics and skills from that degree. List those out. Easy way to market and throw in the topics everyone's going to be looking for. Undergrad, same thing. Relevant courses and topic, build that out. Your education should be a good chunk of the resume at the top. I don't know, like maybe 20%, 15, 20% at least, probably 20%. And then you should have some, if you don't have any internships, not a problem. Again, try to find research opportunities at the university if you can. Try to find something, but then you can fill with projects because at this point, right, what are you going to do? You're in grad school. You need to fill that out. Now, if your program has awesome curriculum and good courses and a good name brand, that's already going to help you. Then on top of that, if you're doing projects in class that are relevant, interesting, and rigorous, you do not need to do any extra projects. Now, if you are in a position where you are not in that, so, for example, I went to the University of Michigan, great school, awesome curriculum, but I ended up switching programs and there weren't really projects and it wasn't, super directly related, you're going to have to do something to brand and market. And I wish I would have done like one really in-depth, interesting project. And I did an interesting one on sentiment valuations within 10Ks. And this was back in like 2012. So before a lot of this NLP and Gen AI stuff was so, widely available. Interesting project. That would have been great for the resume. That would have been a good position to put in. Now, I think projects add value because they help you fill out the resume in sections you might not have. You might not have work experience. You might not have an internship. You might not have a stellar university on your resume. You might not be located. The university might not be located in an easy spot to get a job like New York City or Dallas or Charlotte or Chicago. So you're going to have to do something to stand out, right? And I think this is what a lot of people are ignoring. They go, well, I don't really care about projects. I'm like, I know, I said the same thing, 5 years ago. But if you need to do something interesting, do something rigorous, do something that excites you. Do not do something stupid. I'm going to put this on here. It's really fast and easy to do? Replicated Black-Scholes model and did it in Python. Yeah, congratulations. I can go copy somebody else's GitHub or the repository somewhere and get some code and go, yeah, I ran it. I've also built out a Black-Scholes model in Excel. Like, guys, this is not hard. It's not interesting. It's not valuable. This is not what we do in the industry. We solve hard problems by modifying and changing things. So more interesting problems be like, built a Black-Scholes model to price options with, variable rate volatility and looking at smiles and smirks and, going into that. Then the project will be focused on the models behind the volatility modeling and doing the sorts of corrections. Then you could back that out and say, okay, I used that model in the Black-Scholes framework and then I priced out some options and this was the result and this is how accurate it was and this is how good it was. Interesting project. I digress though. So interesting projects I think are a really critical and key part to help build the resume when you don't have other things on the resume to put on there. Now, let me pull up some of this conversation here. This individual mentioned, they've helped interview at quant trading and quant research roles at some of these kind of big shops, which is fine. But they said projects, don't really set people apart. What really helps is something that's going to be, something interesting, like a chess grandmaster. Or a competitive poker player or games, etc. For quant trading. So I'll leave that out for a second here. Publications with Nature, etc. for quant research and success in math coding competitions or both, something like 200 Putnam. Yeah, that's fine on the buy side. I really just don't care though. I don't care at all. I don't care that you play chess. It has zero skill level when it comes to model development. Okay. Now, as they pointed out with, poker and all that, that's fine. That applies to quant trading. It's strategy. It's looking at other people's game theory kind of thing. I got it. That's relevant. Go ahead and do that. That's just not my interest. For actual model development, though, also being published in things like Nature, being published in top journals is going to be very academic-y and very not feasible for most people. Like, you could take the best and the brightest individual out there, and if they're not at a cutting-edge top university working with a professor who is leading and cutting edge in their field, you're not going to get published. Wake up. This is how academia works. This is why I just don't care about publishing in academic journals either. Like, we don't submit to any of them. I just publish whatever I want because I just don't care. But at the end of the day, right, you're also not going to be able to do that because you're not going to have that professor that's going to do it. If you're at, a top university with a top professor, publishing a paper, co-authoring with, okay, I'll give you that. But the reality is, if you don't have those options, right? Like, I don't care about chess. I'm going to let you know that. Maybe this is important on the buy side. I don't really care. I don't play poker. I don't gamble. I have no desire in learning this. I also, again, the publishing of the research and the top math competitions and coding competitions, I don't know. It's just not my thing. And those I find that are really good at quant research often don't strive to go to competitions and be involved in these sorts of events. They're people like me sitting in this dark studio here at, 9, 10 o'clock at night here, doing something interesting that they want to do. I've got textbooks and research papers and resumes I'm reviewing for work. And, I work this weekend too. I just want to sit and do my own thing. I don't want to go to competitions and all that. Again, maybe this is a different type of personality. Maybe you are the buy-side personality. But but that's just not me. That's just not a lot of quants out there as well. So sure, you can go ahead and do these things. I think they're interesting. May make you an interesting person, but I'm not going to hire you because you won a math competition. I know people get upset when I say that. I just don't care. I don't know. My job is more interesting. It's more robust. I think there are other skills that play into this. And I think doing high level math at an academic level to show your actual grades and work and coursework helps to understand where you are strong in math, not that you're trying to solve math problems very fast. So anyways, I think these are good points though for the buy side. If you want to go on the buy side, I think the personalities, the job types are very different, unique. I would argue too that perhaps maybe some of the firms mentioned may not be as quantitative as I would hope. I don't know. I've never worked at these firms, but I think it's very odd because these are kind of the stereotypes we see online. Maybe these just align with the buy side more on the bigger firms because those are typically the most outspoken people and the most employees. But they're good points. I think they're valid points. I'm not trying to belittle that or anything. They're good points for different roles and different jobs in different industries. But I would argue a lot of quants just aren't going to be in that boat. These aren't going to be actual opportunities of publishing papers or being chess grandmasters or like playing poker. Like these are just things I see a lot on resumes and I just skip over. And again, how do you prove you're the best at something? Again, maybe they have a point. Maybe you need to go to all these competitions and, show people, wow, I'm really good at coding and playing chess or whatnot. And their rebuttal to this, which I thought was a good thought out point as well, was why would I hire a random guy that did a project about creating a portfolio using inverse reinforcement learning when I can just hire the leading researcher in that subject area? So I think that's an interesting point as well, and something perhaps maybe the buy side doesn't quite understand, or maybe some people aren't. So let's just touch on that as well. First of all, how do you find the best person in an area? This is a valid question. I would argue the best person in a specific area, or even the top 5, are probably not known. I'm being dead serious on this. So let's step back from this for a second here. Let's say you're the best NLP expert in the finance side. You're probably working at a fund somewhere. I don't know if it's the biggest firm, if it's the smallest firm. Again, I don't know on the quality, I don't know where you're at. Most people aren't going to know where you're at. Again, a lot of quants that are really, really into these things, they don't search online conferences and then ask to go present things and talk about it. And if nobody already knows who you are, they're not going to invite you. One of the reasons I get invited so much is I'm on YouTube. I'm always on YouTube. I'm talking. People see my work. They hear me. They know what I'm talking about. They go, well, this sounds very interesting. This is a valid point. Maybe this is not a valid point. Let's bring him in and have him discuss this and talk about this at a conference. A lot of quants, especially on the quantitative research side of this, model development, doing rigorous statistics and math, they're just not going to be standing on the top, talking about how great and smart they are. And often a lot of them aren't even going to be publishing papers. So I think it's an interesting point. They might be doing cutting edge research in a firm, whether it's a bank or an investment firm or something else, some other sort of company. Often it's proprietary to the company, so they're not going to be publishing and posting this. Rentech would be a great example of this. They're very secretive at Renaissance Technology. You don't have people that are saying, hey, I made all this money for Renaissance Technology doing NLP. Check out this amazing paper I published, and I made 60% returns on average, and I'm a genius. That's one part of it. The second part of it is going to be, even if you go into academia, you say, okay, let's find the leading researchers in this area. Let's pick something else. Let's pick stochastic processes. You find the leading experts in stochastic processes in academia. You say, okay, we're going to pay you $1 million, $10 million, $100 million. Come over here and work for us at a hedge fund. They're probably not going to take it. I know it seems odd to a lot of people. A lot of people in academia, they're in there for a reason. They don't want to go to the industry. They want to sit and work on hard problems. They're not interested in making money and being pushed and rushed to solve problems. They like what they're doing. They like going to conferences. They're probably tenured track by now. They have top publications. They have a lot of respect. The industry respects them. They have this whole grandeur, it's who they are. It's an academic thing. It's taken them years to get here, to get tenure. Why would they give that up just for a bunch of money? Now, I know some people are laughing and saying, oh, well, of course they would. You guys realize I made more money in my first job than my favorite professor that was teaching statistics for financial engineering, like quant side. I made more money than on my first job. Okay? So again, thinking about that from the perspective, it's not just the money. They could have easily have quit, I'm sure, long ago and found an industry job and done that. Often they don't know how to get to the industry. They don't want to get to the industry. But I think it is a little bit, misleading that you just go hire them. And I think then the third point is going to be probably my grind with the buy side in general, especially the big funds. You can't just buy people, right? Especially at a small fund. So, this individual, the original question was a student was, why should I do a project, or how do I find good projects, talk about projects. And I agree. I don't think projects are always going to be the solve all solution, because most projects are too simple, too easy. And then when I say do something very rigorous, you go, well, how? Like what does that mean? And, you got to be smart enough to figure out what to do and what not to do. And you have to do talking to industry practitioners will help you get to that. It's a lot of work to do a very rigorous, interesting project on it. I'll give you that. But also on the same token, big firms may have that 7-figure budget that can pay $1 million to hire someone. And that might be a valid strategy. So backing up their argument, perhaps you do just go out and find, the best person and you hire them. But again, were they a chess grandmaster, a poker player, or publishing in Nature? Probably publishing in some sort of top journal, perhaps, right? But I doubt they're one of the other ones. I don't think those are going to add any value on actually doing something of worth in quantitative model development, research, that side of it here. Also looking at this too, as I mentioned in a previous video, which I just shot here about 10 minutes ago, which I'll publish hopefully first, was talking about, looking at where do you find really interesting quant work? Not the money part. Like I want just a really interesting quantitative job that's heavy in math and stats. And often you're going to have to work for a small firm. Right? You're going to find someone interesting. That's the only opportunity you could get. You end up finding a job. It's a great job. And it's a small firm. I can tell you from working at a fintech, they're not going to pay me 7 figures. It doesn't matter how smart I am. It doesn't matter how good I am. They're not going to pay me 7 figures. I could be the leading expert in a very specific area, different topics here. And I'm probably one of the leading experts in model risk management. I'd kind of throw that out there. So validation works, looking at a lot of statistical frameworks. There are topics that I really dig deep on and specialize on. Again, most people don't know. I don't talk about them because I can't. It's proprietary work at these companies. I don't just go spreading out and talking about it. It's a whole thing. So often these individuals that are really smart, they might find a really good job at a small firm. Small firms can't actually hire them. So that's a whole piece. And then on top of that, doing projects, you would do projects if you were a student. You would not be a leading expert in anything being a student. You might have worked on an interesting research project from a professor, right? That professor might have an interesting project and you might co-author with them, but it's not going to be your idea. It is very, very, very rare. And even if you did, and you were the absolute best, and all these big firms are willing to pay 7 figures to get you, you can only work at one of them. So all the other firms are going to eventually say you're too expensive. Maybe it's not going to pan out. There are all these other factors in here. So I would just like to kind of talk about these points in this video here to kind of show you guys the dynamics of looking at this from a corporate hiring stance too. Like I just don't have an infinite budget. Like I've had candidates. I've had the dream quant. I want him to work on my quant team. I can't get him. He's a personal friend of mine. I've mentioned this in past podcasts, but I'm not pushing him. I'm not trying to convince him to spend all this money to do it. One, I don't have the budget to get him. I just don't. And two, I think it would, so I'm looking at this now as a personal friend perspective. I don't think the job would align with what really makes him happy. So I threw it out there. I had a budget. It was a decent budget. It wasn't an amazing budget. It wasn't even competitive to his current job, but I thought, working with me would be fun and awesome. Again, I think if I would have offered him $1 million, 7 figures, I think he would have strongly considered it. And there would probably been like a, 60% chance he would have came over. I still think there was a 40% chance he would have been like, I know what I've got here. I don't have the headaches. I don't have the problems. I'm making really good money anyways. So, we're increasing, but it's not life-changing. It's $1 million is pretty good. But at the end of the day, I think that would have been a hard sell as well. So looking at this from a corporate side too, you can't just buy people out. I'm sorry. That's just not how life works. And again, it does. You can get people to come. Even if you convince them to come, maybe I paid someone 7 figures, I get them to come over and they realize this is awful and they don't like it and it's not what they wanted, they're going to leave. Money only lasts for so long. Trust me. So again, we call those golden handcuffs, right? You pay someone more than they're worth to get them to stay or to get them to get the job. But eventually they leave, the job sucks, like the performance sucks because they just aren't that happy. These are really hard things to solve. These aren't just money problems here. So class projects, again, it depends where you are in the cycle. If you're undergrad, really focus on getting into grad school. Don't worry about the class projects. If you're in grad school, you're a student, you're trying to break out, projects are going to be critical. And to the other person's statements on Discord, if you're an industry practitioner, I don't think projects are worth your time at all. Maybe they might help you transition. That might be a good use case. Maybe you find something interesting to do. You put it in a project. You know, you talk about it a little bit. But at the same time, once you're so far into career, probably about 5 years in, it's very hard to switch. People are just set and gung-ho on doing what they want to do. So anyways, those are my thoughts. Those are my takeaways. I hope you guys found this interesting. If you did, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to join the Discord channel, because that is where all the fun is at.